Base currency in the United States. This is the number of paper dollars that exist, basically. It took 200 years to go from no dollars in existence to 825 billion. And then we had the bailouts, and then we had QE1, quantitative easing, 1, then QE2, and then we had QE3, and then QE4, and then soon we're going to have QE57 and QE382. And it isn't just here. This is what the Canadian currency supply looks like. This is Australia, South Africa, Russia. Now, this starts out in just the year 2001, and this is like 18 times more currency in existence in a little over a decade. Here's Singapore, same story. Look at that, since the crisis, just bam. India, China, every government on the planet is doing this insane deficit spending and expanding their currency supplies, doing bailouts, and history shows that there is no example of this turning out well.
The Federal Reserve's over century-long plan to be the lender and buyer of last resort, and therefore the owner of it all, is in full swing. The Fed is in absolute control of the global markets right now. Again, why? The Fed is the hub. All of these central banks around the world are owned by the same entities.
A swap line is a lifeline. Think of it as a line of credit, unlimited. We're at $500 billion already in the first month of these central banks being granted. That's foreigners. So the Americans are subsidizing the demand for US dollars in these foreign countries. So if you want to take Bank of Japan has already drawn down over $225 billion in the first month of being allowed to. And here's the scheme. When you want to talk about the shadow banking or the friendly agreement, there's 7-day loans or 84-day loans, so 12 weeks. So that's kind of where it's at. And you look at the interest rates being paid, they're not getting paid back. They're just rolling these over and over and over. So they take a 7-day, they roll it over to 84 days, and they just keep compounding. Now, what is wild about this is the chair of the Fed, of the US Fed, so right now Powell, does not need to get US President Trump's approval, Congress's approval, the House's approval, nobody. It's essentially an incredible stick, but the swap line nations that have this lifeline, they have to agree to the terms and conditions, and essentially it's America saying, hey, you're our ally, we'll back you. If you're short of US dollars, we'll create a swap line, a lifeline, a line of credit, unlimited. So, but over 80 countries have already asked for swap lines. Turkey's openly begging for them, but you have to agree to the terms and conditions. So Mexico has a swap line, Canada has a swap line, Australia, Sweden, Norway. These are American allies.
And there was interest due on every one of those loans that the banks made. That means that there is interest due on every dollar in existence. Let me ask you something. If you borrow the very first dollar into existence, and that's the only dollar that exists on the planet, but you promise to pay it back plus another dollar's worth of interest, where do you get the second dollar to pay the interest? The answer is that you have to borrow that one into existence and promise to pay it back with interest as well. So now there are $2 in existence, but you owe $4, and so on and so on. The result is there's never enough currency to pay the debt. There is always more debt in the system than there is currency in existence to pay the debt. Therefore, the whole system is impossible. It is finite. It will come to an end one day. What would happen if the government stopped borrowing to do deficit spending? Are the payments on those treasury bonds going to stop? What would happen if the public stopped borrowing and going deeper into debt? Are your house and car payments going to stop? No. There is a payment due every month on the principal plus the interest on every dollar in existence, and those payments do not stop. If we stop borrowing, then no new currency is created to replace the currency that we used to make those payments. Whether you're making a payment on a loan or paying tax to make a payment on a bond, the portion of the payment that goes to pay off the principal extinguishes that portion of the debt. But the debt also extinguishes the currency. Currency and debt are like matter and antimatter. When they meet, they annihilate each other. If we just pay off the principal only on all the loans and bonds that exist, the entire currency supply just vanishes. So if we don't go deeper into debt every year, look what happens. The whole thing goes into a deflationary collapse under the weight of those payments. One of the things that I identified when I was writing my book, I started looking for cycles and patterns that repeat. And I put every single crisis that I could say, every stock market crash, set of bank runs, every kind of crisis that I could find into a spreadsheet, looking for something that had a sort of a regularity about it. And what I found just leapt out at me. It was that the world has a brand new monetary system every 20 to 30 years or so. And now we're way, way overdue for the next monetary system. And the current monetary system is the worst designed out of all the monetary systems. But we've had 4 in the past century.
Never underestimate just how far untethered computer-driven trading can distance itself from the true economy. This increases the possibility we may be in another phase of the wash, rinse, repeat cycle that flushes money away from the common man and into the hands of the 1% that eats our lunch. The truth is, most Americans only get to smell the feast and have no seat at the table when the Wall Street elite dine. We get little more than the promise that our pension or 401 will be solvent when we need the money, that is if we are lucky enough to have either.
Suppressed rates from here to eternity, trillions in stimulus, they're going to put a cap on it. Yeah, sure they are. It's not going to stop. Fed is not going to stop inflating this market until they're ready. And when they're ready, that will be when the extreme wealth transfer occurs, okay? When the middle class will be gone, decimated, finished. Because again, they're all looking at their 401ks, those members of the middle class that do have one, or anyone who has a 401k or an investment that only makes money when stocks go higher. They're looking at it right now and they're like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But I guarantee you, none of them, or very few, maybe a fraction of a percent are smart enough to pull it at the right time.
African countries ban the dollar. In Zambia, you can go to jail if you use US dollars. Quantitative easing number 3. They have announced at the Federal Reserve that they're starting with $40 billion of currency that they're creating each month, and now it jumps to $85 billion. That's more than $1 trillion a year. And remember, it took 200 years to go from no dollars to 825 billion, and now they're going to create $1 trillion every year. We go to a new monetary system, and I think it's absolutely inevitable. There's just too much energy built up in this one that has to release. It has to come crashing down somehow. When that happens, there's an enormous wealth transfer for people that are on one side of the bet or another. And people don't realize that whether they think they are making a bet or not, they are making the bet. They are involved. This wealth transfer affects everybody, whether you want to participate or not. If you're holding paper assets and paper currencies, you have bet one direction. If you're holding gold and physical assets, you've bet the opposite direction.
I think that the Fed will buy every single bit of paper, whether it be stocks or bonds. I believe that they will cap the Treasury, 10-year especially. They've done it before, and that's usually the last sign. I think that they will attempt to destroy all currency, that they will attempt to go with digital only, Fed coin, whatever it's called, that they will eventually do stimulus part 3, part 4 into some digital wallet that they'll be able to control and limit how and when we spend it. And I think eventually they lose control of interest rates. And I think we go into a massive stagflation and hyperinflation scenario. And I think all this happens within the decade. And I think we lose the dollar and we have a reset.